Some people have asked me if I still play big, meaty war games, because I haven't come out with many reviews about those in a while. And that is true, but there is a reason. In the last couple of weeks, I've been teaching a very intensive class at Indiana University about representations of war in fiction, literature, film, and games too. And that has eaten up most of my free time. The few games that I've been able to finagle into my schedule are pretty much very light introductory war games that I use in the class with the students to exemplify ways in which military conflicts can be represented, can be portrayed in a dynamic way, and also to add material to the discussion about the historical conflicts that we also see through the lenses of film and literature. Also, when I'm not doing this, I've had some free time because of the recent break for Thanksgiving, but I've been playing a very big, long game, Unconditional Surrender, which is why the video for that one is not ready yet, but now my intensive class is over, so I'm going to play a lot of that game in the next couple of days, and a review will come out soon. As for the game of today, Latin Intervention, that is a game that indeed I have included in my class about representations of war in fiction. We have read Going After Cachado in the last week. We talked about the Vietnam War, and I wanted more in general to also talk about counterinsurgency and that type of conflict. Latin Intervention is a game that allowed me to do that. It is a game that talks about military and intelligence and political influences in Central America during the Cold War. It is a pretty abstract game, very simple, so that is something that is easy to include in a class where the students are not regular war gamers or not even regular gamers in most cases. It is also very cheap because it is a print and play game. You can find the files for free and just print the file from Board Game Geek. It is a one-page game, which is pretty awesome. You don't even have to waste much paper and ink. All the game is in one page, which is really good if you need a good number of copies to bring to a classroom. And if you're just playing the game not for classroom purposes, but for yourself, still a very easy, light game to play. But of course, the big question is it fun? Now, I'll address this in my conclusions, but before I do that, I need to add a warning here. The game, the instructions, some points were a little ambiguous to me. One of the prices to pay, I guess, when you have instructions that are this low. So I experimented with the game a little bit. In cases of ambiguity, I made my own assessments, and also I made a couple of modifications. The rules as written didn't convince me in a couple of points. There were a couple of loopholes that I found that didn't satisfy me. So I made a couple of changes. If you want to know how the game is supposed to be played by the book or by the single page, then you can just read the instructions as published. In my review, I'm going to tell you about my version, my variant. Occasionally I'll refer to the rules say this, but I play it that way. But I'm not gonna do it every second, otherwise that would be too redundant and boring. Also, I used an updated graphic version that again is available on Board Game Geek. I just found that with this upgraded board and counters, the game is more pleasant to play. So to be honest, I don't know how much of the original Latin Intervention has remained, really. There's the original idea, the map that has been made by a player that is not the original designer, and some variant rules that I've added. Anyways, let me show you how Latin Intervention plays when I play it. If you play with me, the following is what you may expect. What you see here is all of the components of the game. You have a map representing Central America divided in countries. Countries have no distinguishing features with the exception of Panama, where you place a counter representing the Panama Canal at the beginning of the game. each player has a set of counters representing the forces that they will deploy in Central America, trying to influence the political situation of the country. And each player also has a set of 5 influence markers. You place one such marker in a country once you have a significant influence in the country. The first player to place all 5 markers in 5 countries, that is the first player to influence 5 countries, is the winner of the game. Now, during your turn, you can choose to add a marker from your pool onto the map, like this. Ta-da! Or you can choose to move a marker from one area on the board to another area on the board. Or you can choose to remove a counter and put it back in your pool. Or you can choose to pass. When you add a marker to the board, you look at the number of green dots on the marker. That can be 1 or 2. The communist forces have the revolutionaries that also have 2 green dots. The missile base also has 2 green dots. The Americans only have 1 marker with 2 green dots. When you place a marker on the board or when you move it to another country, you will move the threat marker on the threat level track up by the number of dots on the marker that you have added or that you have moved. I'm placing this marker on the board as an American player, then my threat goes up by 1. If you choose to pass, to do nothing, then your threat level decreases by 1. If you remove a counter from the board, then the threat level also goes down by the number of dots printed on the counter that you have removed. If you push your threat marker all the way to the warning space, then that's bad because you lose the game. You created so much alarm in here that the political situation becomes too unstable. And in my version, each player has an individual marker, so the markers can be at different levels. In the standard game, there is a single marker that is influenced by the 2 players together. I like it better if each player has his or her own can of worms to deal with. After you have taken your turn, there may be countries that are uninfluenced, meaning they don't have an influence marker yet, but they have some of these markers. They may even have markers of multiple players there. In that case, when there are countries that do not have an influence and either contested, because there are counters of both players, or there is, let's call it an enemy counter. For example, that country is influenced by the Soviets, but now there's an enemy counter there. In all such countries where the situation is unstable, because there's influence and enemy, or no influence but contested area, or no influence and at least 1 counter, then the forces in there will try to take control of the country. In any of these situations, the player that has a marker there rolls a die, a d6, and adds the bonus printed on the counter. That would be a +1, or counters. If I had these 2 markers, that's +1 and +1. I roll 1d6 and I had +2. This is +2. I would add +4. If you roll your d6, add the modifiers, and you have a result of 6 or more, you place 1 influence marker there. Suppose that there are counters of both players there, and both players then roll dice. If one player has a total of 6 or more, and that one doesn't, the one with the 6 takes control of the country. Suppose the communists do, then now we have communist control and all of the enemy counters are removed. If both players do roll 6 or more, then nobody takes control of the area. It remains a situation of stall. And so this may be the case. Suppose that later the communists decide to move away these markers, and then the United States want to try to challenge control there. They place this marker here. They adjust the level of threat, and in this case it would be the United States player that rolls, and There are no active markers for the Soviet players, only the United States player rolls. With a 6 or more, the player takes control of the country, well, influences the country, and then replaces the marker. In a sense, I realize that explaining it makes it sound more fiddly than it is. When you look at the board, it will be pretty obvious which are the countries in which you need to resolve situations and the ones where you don't. Like here, of course, you don't need because there's influence in only friendly pieces. Here, there is only a friendly... Well, if there's only a friendly piece, then the United States will need to roll to see if they take control of Panama. Here, a friendly piece, then the Soviets would roll, friendly piece, but influence. Nobody's challenging the United States supremacy or influence there, then that would not be a problem. Here, both players would roll a die, add modifiers, and see if one of them takes control and kicks out the other marker, or if nothing happens and they have to check again, and maybe they will pour more markers in there. There are two very powerful pieces in the game. They both have a bonus of +5, which pretty much means automatic control of a country. You roll, of course, you roll at least a 1 on a d6. That means you get a 6. You get an automatic influence. In my version, what happens is that these two markers, you can choose not to use them at all, or you can choose what I like to do. Each player has one such marker. It can be used once in the game. You put it there, you raise the threat by 2, you roll normally, most likely you will take control of that area. Unless, of course, there is a marker of the opponent rolls 2, and in that case, they both take control of the area, there is a tie, nothing changes. But once you use your +5 marker, and after you raise the threat level and you rolled, benefiting from the bonus, the marker is removed permanently from the game. And the threat level doesn't go down. So these +5 markers, you only use them one, they freak everybody out because they raise the threat level, they give you a powerful attack in one area, and they're gone. So the game continues like this, conflict after conflict, military conflicts, diplomatic conflicts, until a player has taken control of 5 countries by placing 5 influence markers, and at that point, that player is the winner of the game. Now, this is not an epic game, it's not a game that is a game changer in the field of gaming. Man, there's a lot of game references in that sentence. It's an okay game as a game, but for classroom purposes, actually, it is not bad because it is so easy to teach, and it does show some interesting cultural elements and factors that were active, were relevant during the Cold War. The fact that you cannot launch total war, but you have to be careful about possible international reactions, about increasing the warning, increasing the international attention about these conflicts too much. I like the fact that the game is non-symmetrical. The communist forces have revolutionary military forces. The Western forces, the US player has to work more indirectly through agents, through international aid, doesn't have as much military direct power, which works well. I think it captures low intensity conflicts that indeed the US pursued in Central America during the Cold War. It's not bad to play, actually. It's not bad to play, especially, I believe, with my modifications. There are more challenges there. There are some interesting decisions that you have to make when it comes to the timing in which you should exploit moments in which the opponent cannot do much because the opponent has done a lot. The opponent needs to do some diplomacy internationally. I believe that this is abstracted in the fact that you have to wait to lower the warning level. Of course, that just means that you're reducing action, but maybe you're also doing other stuff to make sure that your friends don't think you're acting too crazy. And that is the timing when you need to act, but of course acting too much in such a fragile context means that you yourself are pushing things and you will need to find a breather, time for a breather at some point. I really like that balance there. the fact that you may destroy yourself and maybe the world in an atomic holocaust if you're not too careful. I like committing the very powerful military pieces only once per game. Otherwise, they just turn the game into kind of like annoying back and forth. I don't like the fact that it becomes too automatic to take control of a country, to influence a country if you have those powerful pieces that you can just use a lot of times. And then I guess that there wouldn't be too many reasons not to use them a lot. I think it's better balanced in my variant. If you play the game a lot and you find that one of the two sides is overpowered, of course you can tweak the game further simply by shortening the warning track of one of the sides. You're shortening as much as you need it to balance things, because of course the shorter the warning track, the less possibilities for action that side has. Overall, Latin intervention is not the worst way which you can spend 15 minutes. I think it can have pedagogical merit as long as you're of course willing to then talk to the students and flash out things. It is so abstract that per se teaches or exemplifies very general concepts. Then of course you have to add more stuff in the classroom if you want to use it pedagogically. But I think it is a game that has pedagogical merit. It can be not bad filler, not bad of a game. For the price, I think it is worth putting it together, playing it and learn it. Easy to build and again, very, very cheap. Give it a try. It's really not a bad game.